to its destiny?
75 years ago, India gained independence from British rule and went on to become one of the largest democracies in the world. The India that Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru inherited was that of an economy battered by colonial exploitation and the horrors of partition. The only way for the country was up. Well, literally. For a country that started its space program with rocket parts being transported to the launch site on a bicycle and ox carts, it now plans to send humans to space. And it's not just space. In all fields, the sky was the limit. The 1950s was hard. India was a struggling agrarian economy and poverty was widespread. Something had to give. It came in the form of the Green Revolution in the 1960s. Thanks to the use of technology, production soared. Today, India is the largest producer of pulses and the second largest producer of rice and wheat. The 1970s brought with it a new revolution with a new color. The White Revolution, known as Operation Flood, transformed India from a milk-deficient country to the milk capital of the world, producing 22% of the world's milk.
Chinese troops started intruding.
Defeat in the Indochina War in 1962 punched the whole nation at the gut. After a stalemate in the 1965 Indo-Pakistan War, India's defense forces showed their true worth in the 1971 war, defeating the same enemy, leading to the creation of Bangladesh.
The commander of Pakistani's Eastern Army, Lieutenant General Niazi, had to surrender to India's Lieutenant General Jagdeep Singh Arora.
At the turn of the century, when Pakistani troops infiltrated past the line of control, India hit back in the icy cold conditions in Kargil in what is known as Operation Vijay. Did you know that India was a nuclear power back in 1974? At Pokhran in Rajasthan, India conducted its first nuclear test, codenamed Smiling Buddha. 24 years later, it was back to Pokhran, where India launched 5 nuclear bomb tests under the codename Operation Shakti. India became a full-fledged nuclear state.
India conducted 3 underground nuclear tests in the Pokhran range.
We spoke about India's humble beginnings in space. In 1984, an Indian saw what it was like to actually be there. Rakesh Sharma, an Indian Air Force pilot, bagged that ticket when he joined the Soviet Union's Soyuz T-11 expedition.
ऊपर से भारत कैसा दिखता है आपको?
मैं बगैर किसी झिझक के कह सकता हूँ कि सारे जहां से अच्छा.
25 years since it became a republic, India shot its first satellite, Aryabhatta, into space. How about sending 10 of them in one mission? In 2008, India did just that, setting a world record through its PSLV C9. 5 years later, India launched the Mars Orbiter mission to explore the planet and became the first nation to achieve that in its first attempt. Expect the country to swell with pride again with the upcoming launch of Gaganyaan, India's first human space mission. Look around you, and it's hard to find people from all walks of life without a mobile phone. Almost 93% of households own a mobile phone, according to the National Family Health Survey. India has come a long way since the 1970s, when the waiting period for a landline connection at home could take months. If you wanted to call someone in another city, you had to book a trunk call. On Independence Day 1995, internet services were launched in India by Videsh Sanchar Nigam Limited. In 27 years, the internet penetration in the country stands at 47%. India also has some of the cheapest mobile data in the world, and the country is achieving a new milestone by rolling out 5G services. Close to 45 years after independence in 1991, the then Finance Minister Dr. Manmohan Singh announced the liberalization of the Indian economy. Now, you don't necessarily have to go abroad to buy your favorite shoes or the latest PlayStation. Before the economy opened up, it was a different story. The waiting period to buy a locally made car could take years. The Maruti 800 small car became a symbol of the aspiring middle class. In 1983, its first owner was handed the keys by the Prime Minister herself, Indira Gandhi. Rajiv Gandhi helped bring computers to India in the 1980s, and the digital revolution began. Now, India is one of the world's biggest IT hubs for innovation and outsourcing. India is expected to become the world's fifth largest economy, while a decade ago the country was not even in the top 10. For decades, India was a hockey nation. Little wonder the men's team were the favourites each time they set off for the Olympics, bagging 8 field hockey gold medals till 1980. 3 years later, the sporting landscape in India changed when Kapil Dev's team lifted the 1983 Cricket World Cup. It still remains a cricket-crazy nation and a world cricket powerhouse. It took a long time coming, but in 2008, shooter Abhinav Bindra became the first Indian to win an individual gold medal in the Olympics. In 2020, Neeraj Chopra won India's first gold in athletics. Indian badminton has made huge strides, with the men's team clinching the Thomas Cup for the first time in 2022 and PV Sindhu becoming the first Indian to clinch gold at the World Championships. Did you know that in 1947, the average Indian was expected to live only till around 32 years? By 2022, it has increased to nearly 71 years. Since independence, India launched several programs to curb diseases like malaria, TB, AIDS, and polio. In 2014, India was declared polio-free by the World Health Organization. Now, India has administered more than 2 billion COVID vaccination doses, becoming the second country to hit the milestone after China. In the last 75 years, India has had several curveballs thrown its way. The 1984 Bhopal gas tragedy at the Union Carbide plant remains one of the world's worst industrial disasters, and the effects still haven't worn off. The devastating earthquakes at Latur in 1993 and Gujarat in 2001 shook the whole country. The 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami claimed over 12,400 Indian lives and destroyed several livelihoods. Cyclones and floods continue to batter India from all corners. But the resilience India has shown over 75 years has helped her bounce back from all setbacks.
स्वर्गीय श्री बिलाल अहमद मागरे की माता श्रीमती सारा बेगम।
To Gravitas Plus, I'm Palki Sharma Upadhyay. The year is 2022 and India is celebrating 75 years of independence. 75 years ago, the British left India and we became free. Or did we? Would you say we are still colonized in our minds? Would you say our decision making is 100% free of biases and inferiority complex even? Would you say our choices are still very British or Western? When the British colonized India, they were desperate to legitimize their rule. So they came up with the theory of the white man's burden. They built smokes and mirrors around civilizing India, painted themselves as a superior race. The British were superior, we Indians inferior. Thomas Babington, or Lord Macaulay as you would know him today, brought English education to India. His purpose was to hammer in the inferiority complex. They introduced an education system that hailed the British as superior in science, arts, even morals. On the 2nd of February 1835, Macaulay circulated his Minute on Education. He declared, a single shelf of a good European library was worth the whole native literature of India and Arabia. Quick fact check. The Mahabharata is lengthier than Homer's Iliad and Odyssey combined. The Mahabharata has more than 200,000 lines. Iliad and Odyssey have 30,000 lines each. The Ramayana too is 3 times as large as Iliad. Anyhow, Macaulay did not hesitate in selling lies or spelling out his design. He said British education was meant to create a class of persons, Indian in blood and colour, but English in taste, in opinions, in morals and in intellect. The idea was to make the West aspirational. Do you think Macaulay was successful? I think he was. We're speaking in their language after all. Look around you. Many educated Indians today are very English in their taste. Some have become indifferent to their own culture. Do you remember when Coldplay performed in India? That concert was sold out. Do you remember when Justin Bieber played in India? Newspapers said the madness was unprecedented. But year after year, Indian classical singers perform to empty halls. Indian classical dancers get no audience. Kathak veteran Shobna Narayan once said that the Indian audience seems to have a closed mind to Kathak. But salsa or flamenco, those we would love to pick up. Because these dances are seen as aspirational. And nothing wrong in learning another dance form, it only enriches you, but not at the cost of denigrating your own. Do you know Kathak was first recorded in the 4th century BC? I don't know any Western dance form that goes back so far or has evolved as much. You know what else is aspirational? The Louvre in Paris. One photo of it on our Instagram and we have arrived. But India's National Gallery of Modern Art, which has one of the richest collections of contemporary arts, gets just 30,000 visitors a year. The Louvre in Paris gets 2.5 million visitors every year. The Tate in London has an annual footfall of 4 million. What explains this gap? Is it India's disinterest in everything Indian or the obsession with everything Western? Do we still blame Macaulay for this? Or our failure to invest in our culture? The reasons are multiple and the result is clear. Today an Indian dreams of becoming Western, aping the West or living the Western lifestyle. For an Indian, the West has become synonymous with advancement and modern living. But these are two different things, Western and modern. If only we could cure this 75-year-old colonial hangover, if only we could look through what Macaulay wanted us to learn, if only we could reconnect with our heritage, we would realize that it's us, the Indians, who have always been ahead of our times. Ancient India was aspirational, ancient India was advanced. Meet Bodhayana. He lived in 800 BC. He calculated what the world knows today as the Pythagoras theorem. Pythagoras lived in 570 BC in Greece. Most likely he picked the theorem from the Hindu sages he studied under. Have you heard of the Fibonacci number sequence? This is how it looks. Every number is the sum of the 2 preceding numbers. The world credits Italian mathematician Fibonacci for the sequence. But an Indian sage named Hemchandra wrote it long before Fibonacci. And Hemchandra was not the first, by the way. An Indian mathematician named Gopala studied these numbers long before Hemchandra or Fibonacci. Eurocentric textbooks will not tell you this. Macaulay would never want you to know this. An Indian invented zero, an Indian taught the world how to calculate the value of pi, an Indian invented the decimal system or the binary digits, or the heliocentric theory about the solar system. It was Aryabhat who first proposed that the earth is round, it rotates on its axis and revolves around the sun. Today we learn about Copernicus. We wear t-shirts and sweatshirts of NASA. But 1,000 years before Copernicus, Aryabhat determined the diameter of the earth. He also determined the diameter of the moon. The culture of science in India dates back 5,000 years. Did you know the modern English brick bonding was inspired by Indus cities? Today we look westward at the very mention of plastic surgery, but it was India that taught plastic surgery to the world. Meet Sushruth. He was an ancient Indian physician. He lived around 800 BC in the kingdom of Kashi. Sushruth Samhita is the earliest known document to give a detailed account of rhinoplasty. It also describes more than 300 different operations, some 121 surgical instruments. A lot of them are very similar to modern-day surgical tools. Sushruth would use herbs before an operation to prevent sepsis. He would also carry out cataract removal. This was in 800 BCE. Today we have lost out on this rich legacy because of our indifference to Indian heritage. And the West has time and again played it to its advantage. In the early 1990s, two American researchers staked a claim to the US Patent and Trademark Office. They said they discovered the healing properties of turmeric or haldi. These researchers were given the patent in 1995. Now here's what's funny. Indian households have been using turmeric paste on wounds for ages, but somehow we never filed a patent. Around the same time, a US company applied for another patent. This was about using neem as a pesticide, again something Indian farmers have known for ages. This patent too was granted. Do you think there is a lesson in all of these stories? I would say there is. The world we live in will always have false claims. History will always be Eurocentric. There will always be sharks stealing ideas and innovations. But if we don't reconnect with our rich heritage, we would continue to be fooled by Macaulay and company. We will continue to believe that Indians are inferior. The world won't remind you that the Industrial Revolution that started in the West was powered by the cotton gin, and that the machine was invented in India. India also had the earliest known dock. It was at Lothal in Gujarat. Steel was made in India as early as 500 BC. It is possible that Indian scientist Kanad devised the atomic theory centuries before John Dalton was even born. India was the first to smelt zinc by distillation. The first seamless celestial globe was made in Kashmir. It was by Ali Kashmiri Ibn Luqman. And despite all of these advancements, India never went on an offensive. India never invaded another country. We did not have crusades. Our ancestors not just taught the world science, mathematics, and astronomy, we also exemplified tolerance. This is the birthplace of four religions: Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, Sikhism. It is hard to find a heritage this rich. 75 years ago, we got the chance to reclaim this very heritage. But have we done justice to it? 75 years ago, Mahatma Gandhi led a freedom movement so that you and I could claim what is rightfully ours. You know, the great Indian heritage. But 75 years on, our minds may still not be free and our spirit of innovation not completely unleashed. Look at the number of patents India filed in 2020 and compare this to the rest of the world. This is just one parameter, but it tells you the story. Freedom is supposed to nourish critical thinking. Freedom is about being proud of your culture, your color, your customs. So let's stop looking westwards. Let's look inwards. We've been free for 75 years. It's time we reclaimed our lost glory. It's time we reconnected with our heritage and got back to being what we've always been, far, far ahead of the times. I hope you've had a good Independence Day. I spent it by writing a little note to myself. Here's a question that I asked myself. What are we celebrating? Is India really independent? Bear with me and hear me out. Are you and I independent? Well, I don't think so. And what I'm about to share with you tonight is a rather unpopular opinion. But I need to say it out loud to myself and to all of you. Hello and welcome to Gravitas Plus. I'm Palki Sharma Upadhyay, and I think in some ways, my country and I are still living in the shackles of the English rule. I will break down my argument into three parts. and I will begin with language. This language that I am communicating to you in is English, the language of England. This is the map of India, 28 states, 8 union territories, each with at least 2 Indian languages. India has 19,569 mother tongues. 121 of these are spoken by 10,000 people or more. The number of official languages in India is 22. All these numbers, and independent India wants to master one language, the language of our invaders. What was India's freedom struggle all about? Having our own identity. What defines our identity more than our mother tongue? If India is independent, why have we not let our mother tongues flourish? Why are we shy of speaking Indian languages? Why have they become a sign of backwardness? If someone speaks in Hindi, Tamil, Odia, Bangla or Assamese, he or she is seen as less qualified. When the same person speaks in English, his or her chance and standing improve. Independent India has put the language of our colonizers on a pedestal. English is a socio-economic marker, the language you must know if you want to be successful in India. If you've ever attended a parent-teacher meeting, you would have noticed how parents are obsessed with the idea of their children speaking fluent English. The popular notion is this: perfecting English equals to scoring better in other subjects. Wrong. Perfecting one's mother tongue is what gives someone an edge in other subjects, and I have research to back this up. In 1973, a researcher studied Native American students in Mexico. She found those who were taught in their native language early on and then transitioned to Spanish outperformed their peers who were taught only in Spanish. Similar research was carried out in Honduras, Iran and Togo. The result was the same. When a child is taught in a language she speaks at home, her test scores shoot up. Here is another popular notion. English language equals to success. If you want to do well, you must know English. Have you ever wondered how Japan, Germany, or for that matter even China, have made it to the top 5 economies of the world? Most of the people there do not speak English. That's some food for thought as I move to point number 2, history. Not the one that we have lived, but the one we study. The history that is taught in Indian schools is not Indian history at all. It is India through the lens of Britain. Do you know that Imperial England used history as a tool for suppressing Indians? In 1868, Max Muller, the famous Indologist, wrote a letter to the Duke of Argyll. He was the then Secretary of State of India, and these words are from Muller's letter. I'm quoting, "India has been conquered once, but India must be conquered again, and the second conquest should be a conquest by education." The British custom-made Indian history to suit their purpose. We were taught that it was the invasion of Alexander that civilized us. The Shakas and the Kushans were good for the natives. The invasion of Muhammad bin Qasim, the Ghoris, the Tughlaqs, the Lodhis, the Mughals, they were all good for India. Akbar was great. What about Raja Man Singh? He was the Rajput commander of Akbar's armies. He helped Akbar the Great extend his empire. Why aren't we studying Raja Man Singh enough? Because he is an Indian and the British were not comfortable endorsing him. Now here is the question. Why are our history books still so selective? Our books mention Newton, but conveniently shrink passages on the 6th century mathematician Brahmagupta. Indians are not taught that it was one of their own who first developed numericals 1 to 9 and 0. Our history books have no mention of Vedic maths and how it inspired the world, or how the world learnt from the Hindu agricultural practices, how ancient India was the world's most favored trading nation, the influence of the Indian civilization on Southeast Asia. Also omitted from Indian history books is the Ahom dynasty. They ruled Assam for 600 years and even defeated the British. Why do our books gloss over the Cholas and the Pandyas? Our textbooks are still not free of British influence, and it is not just about Indian history. The world history we study also reeks of strong British bias. Take World War II, for example. Our books glorify the British and the American troops. What about the Indians who fought in the British Army? What Western historians also do not realize is that the turning point of the Second World War was the defeat of the Nazi army in Russia. The British can go ahead and hide this from their students, but why are we? India is still living in the shackles of the Raj. I will give you more examples. Under point number 3, and that is society. our institutions are still living with a colonial hangover. The elected parliamentarians of independent India say aye and no when voting in the House.
Those in favor may say aye. Those against may say no.
Have you noticed the attire of the Darwans standing beside the Speaker of the Lok Sabha and the Chairman of the Rajya Sabha? Colonial. Judges in India are still referred to as my lord and your honor, lordship. And I don't even want to get started on how our judicial system with all the paperwork is so British. What about the use of Sevadar or Sahayaks in the Indian Army? There has been so much hue and cry about it. The British pitted religions and ethnic groups against each other. Independent India continues to embrace that divide. We still follow the British education system, and we still do not give our children the freedom to innovate. They are enslaved by grades and test scores, the vices of the British education system. Freedom was not supposed to be a mere change of hands. How can we call ourselves independent if we do not have the freedom to make our choices? A woman still cannot rise up the ranks of the Indian Army. Indian attire is not modern enough for so many. High tea and English breakfast are signs of having arrived. We wear gowns at graduation ceremonies. We shun dark skin. Our police forces still lathi charge. English remains a vehicle of social mobility. We love Shashi Tharoor for voluminous diction, but we question the need to be fluent in our vernacular. We know all about the British royal family, but we know nothing about the Satavahanas. The point I'm making is very simple. India has achieved a lot. No one can take away that from us. But many Indians still need to break free. Sixth birthday. 75 years ago, at midnight, India made a tryst with destiny. An independent India was born. It was drained, divided, but desperate to make it on its own. How has the journey been so far? Tonight, we'll look at India's achievements at 75, the success stories at 75. Hello and welcome to Gravitas Plus. I'm Palki Sharma Upadhyay. There's so much to talk about. It's been a stupendous journey of 75 years. We decided to start with the economy. The British Crown looted $45 trillion from India. From raw materials to the Kohinoor diamond, the British took all. They also exploited all. The thumbs of Indian weavers were cut off. Indian peasants were crushed. The brightest jewel in the British Crown was left with the prospect of a dim future. Britain deindustrialized India. At the time of independence, India's per capita income was 230 rupees. That's $2.89. The average income was 1/15 of what an average American earned. There was poverty, hunger. The task before India was to lift itself, and it did. There was rapid industrialization, 3 successful revolutions, green, white and blue. India opened itself to the world, globalized its economy, privatized its banks. 75 years later, India is one of the world's leading economies. From less than $3, India's per capita income has grown to almost 2,000. Its share in the world GDP is 3.28%. 7 decades back, India was an import-dependent country. Today, more and more global companies are making in India, and Indian companies are making a mark globally. India is becoming a force to reckon with in more ways than one. Which brings us to geopolitics. India successfully navigated the Cold War. It became a political force for decolonization. India liberated Bangladesh. It reached out to Africa, successfully dehyphenated Israel and Palestine, stuck strategic partnerships with the Gulf. India isolated Pakistan. When India and Pakistan had a dogfight, the world supported India. When Pakistan tried to make an issue out of Kashmir, the world again supported India. Today, world powers see India as an important partner, a leading voice in multilateral forums, the face of peace, the loudest cheerleader of counter-terrorism. Of course, the journey has not been easy. Right after independence, India made some bad decisions, like letting go of a Security Council seat. Then there were security challenges. 1948, Pakistan's incursion into Kashmir. 1962, the war with China. 1999, the war in Kargil. The current standoff in Ladakh. But on every such occasion, India showed the world that it's capable of defending itself, capable of resisting any attempt to redraw its map. India has taught the world tolerance, universal acceptance, and none of it was easy. You may recognize this man, Winston Churchill, Britain's former Prime Minister. Churchill had dismissed India's experiment with self-governance. Why? Because India is socially diverse. 22 languages, 20,000 dialects, numerous religions, numerous regions. Churchill said, India is merely a geographical expression. It is no more a single country than the equator. He was convinced that independent India won't be able to stay together. Well, Churchill was wrong. India remains united and grows stronger. Its success as a secular state has surprised many. Of course, there have been ups and downs. India survived a partition, the Babri Masjid demolition, the Operation Blue Star, what followed, the Gujarat riots. But which country does not have rough patches, and which country can claim to be this diverse? In the initial years post-independence, it was tough keeping the country together. One of the big challenges was public health, or the lack of it. In 1947, the average life expectancy in India was 32 years. There was rampant spread of communicable diseases like malaria and tuberculosis. In 1947, India registered 75 million cases of malaria. Its total population was 330 million. So almost 23% of the population had malaria. By 1964, the numbers came down. Then there was polio. Until early 1990s, every day around 500 children were getting paralyzed. India fought polio and declared itself polio-free by 2014. Today, India's polio eradication is a case study of healthcare success for the world. India also eradicated smallpox, and as we speak, India is running the world's largest vaccination program. India's healthcare system is one of its biggest achievements. We hardly appreciate it because there's a lot that's not right. But when you look at where we started, the achievements look astounding. Around the time of independence, 2,000 mothers died for every 1 lakh childbirths. 2,000. Today that number is down to 103. Also look at the increase in life expectancy. It's over 100%. This is one of the most important indicators of human development. Today, India is called the world's pharmacy. It exports medicines to 200 countries and regions. Another feather in the cap is technology. India decided to go to space just 17 years after independence. It set up INCOSPAR, or Indian National Committee for Space Research. India's first rocket launch happened in 1963 from a town called Thumba. The rocket parts were transported on bicycles and bullock carts. Look at this photo. This is how India's space journey began. Today, India is a well-established space power. It has reached Mars. Today, India is unfurling the tricolour in space to mark 75 years of independence. Do you know India was also the first country outside the permanent UNSC members to test a nuclear bomb? And it did this despite the world's best efforts. Reports say the CIA killed an Indian scientist to roadblock the nuclear journey. The US had even deployed a satellite over India to spy. So work on the nuclear test was mostly done during the night, and equipment would be returned to the original place in the morning to evade detection by American satellites. Code names were used. The thermonuclear device, for example, was placed in a shaft named White House. On the 18th of May 1974, India took the world by surprise. It became a nuclear power. The operation was called Smiling Buddha. The director of India's Nuclear Research Institute, Raja Ramanna, told the then Prime Minister Indira Gandhi, Buddha has smiled. How did India achieve all of this? 1. Democracy. 2. Literacy. From the very first day of independence, every adult in India had the right to vote. And just for reference, it took the US 150 years of independence to adopt universal adult franchise. In the last 75 years, India's population has grown from 370 million to 1.4 billion. States have been reorganized, but the sanctity of elections has never been compromised. They're chaotic, yes, they're controversial, but they're held without fail every 5 years. Voters queue up in front of booths. Some cast their vote, some vote their caste, but all of them exercise their right. And there have been dark periods. Like the emergency in 1975, then Prime Minister Indira Gandhi was facing protests. Her future in office was uncertain, so she declared a 22-month-long emergency. Democratic institutions were attacked, politicians were locked up, the press was censored. But it did not last. And that's the thing about India's story. It's far from perfect. There's corruption, there's inefficiency, and everything else that we keep complaining about. Yet, India's democracy has delivered. It has alleviated poverty, built world-class infrastructure, and sent Indians to space, to win gold medals and beauty pageants, and to lead the world's biggest companies. Literacy has played an important role here. When India became independent, 4 out of 5 people could not read. The literacy rate was around 12%. For India to grow, it had to educate its people. It made free education a fundamental right. Schemes like Sarv Shiksha Abhiyan and midday meal ensured that children found their way to schools. India expanded its educational infrastructure. In 1947, India had only 28 medical schools, 4 dental colleges, and 33 engineering colleges. Look at the numbers today. The India that could neither read nor write is now the world's biggest talent pool. Top engineers, doctors, Indian origin CEOs all bear testimony to India's growth and transformation. Today's India is home to 1.4 billion people. It is progressive, yet rooted in its culture and values. It is home to the world's youngest population, the world's largest democracy, the world's largest film industry, the world's largest diaspora population, the second largest road network, a leader in climate action, a market that every company wants to enter, and a strategic force that every government wants to partner. Today, as India celebrates its historical achievements, it also has a clear vision of the future. This is India at 75.
Good afternoon, one and all. We wish you all a happy Independence Day. We have seen the curtain riser videos, in the past 75 years, how our nation has progressed. So today is the day to remember our history, at the same time, how the progress has made from the past to the present and how it is going to contribute in the future. Today is a day for positivity. Today is a day for productivity. Today is a day for constructivity. There is no scope for negativity, criticism, or any kind of negative aspects today. Today, let's rejoice. Today, let's appreciate. Today, let's pat ourselves for the achievements made for the past history. We are very critical, but then we have seen with the curtain raiser videos how diverse is our culture, how diverse is our nation, which has set the nation into so much complexities. How many of us know these facts? We always talk about so many things, Have we ever talked about these developments? The nation is progressing towards, in every sector, you take anything from agriculture to space, from education to defense, from industry to innovation. There are a lot of developments. So the development communication is really, does the development communication really happens? To what extent? Are we carried out by the propaganda of underdevelopment or a reverse development? Are we being aware and educated by the development communication? Are we aware of these facts, or we are carried away by the propaganda of Western cultures and Western education? So all these aspects has to be carefully, critically analyzed, understood, and we have to see really, when we always use this word scientific, but how far is this scientific word scientific? Have you ever had a thought? We have this habit of using science without knowing the definition of science, or without knowing the context of science, that has made fun of science itself. We talk as per scientific, it is not scientific, that is not scientific, this is not scientific. What is scientific? The curtain raises videos has shown what is scientific. What India has taught to the entire world, and what the entire world has taught to India. So what kind of science or what kind of education that is imparted in the educational institutions? What kind of education, what kind of communication that is being spread across the nation? Now, whether it is facts or a propaganda, which is driven by hidden agendas or strategies. Now, what is that we all need to talk about when we are celebrating 75 years of independence? What is that we really need to talk? Whether we will keep talking, whether we will keep criticizing, or whether we will start doing. With this context, we are very much into today's celebration that we are not going to talk anything critical today, because we need to overcome ourselves. Today is freedom from our negativity, freedom from our bias, freedom from prejudices, and freedom from our own preconceived notions. Let's break the stigma. Let's break our preconceived notions. Let's break our ignorance today, and let's see, at least for this day, let's see and let's talk about the productivity, how we have advanced. As I already informed to every one of you, today's theme is Glory of 75 Years of India. So hope everyone, all the speakers would adhere to the theme and will positively, constructively, productively talk on these aspects, how India has progressed in a positive, constructive, and productive manner. This is not only towards a positive perspective of nation, how far we are able to come out of the shackles of this propaganda, which has been widely being carried out by different elements in the society, maybe within the country or outside the country. You know, our own culture, our own languages are made inferior with this quality, with this type of education. Today, we are ashamed of ourselves speaking our own language. We are ashamed of ourselves practicing our own cultures and traditions. This kind of propaganda, which is widely promoted everywhere, even in media, even in society, has become a threat to the cultural diversity of the nations, many nations, not for that matter. This is one kind of invasion that is happening, and we are still are not independent of these things. Today, we are talking about independence. Have we really achieved independence in terms of these biases, prejudices, and propaganda? Is what we need to really look. And today's conference will set the platform to overcome this. So our sessions will convey whether we have really overcome this, whether we have really achieved our independence in terms of our prejudices, in terms of our bias, in terms of our ignorance, in terms of our understanding, and moving from negativity towards positivity, and from critics to appreciation, and from ignorance to enlightenment. So let's today's session focus on these aspects, and let's see how really we can perform. No, we are very critical, we are very analytical on a particular topic, on a particular situation. Now, criticism is very easy. We can criticize anyone, anything for any matter. You know, Vadaniki, Vitanda Vadaniki, enta bedam undo. In similar way, you know, criticism and appreciation also has a similar notion of taking it forward. You know, we can criticize, but we have to constructively criticize so that it is leading to some productive process. But what happens, we are so much trained, in fact, brainstormed to always think in a negative way. We don't appreciate the positive things that are happening. For that matter, even in our lives also, we don't appreciate. See, today we got up, we are alive. We need to appreciate ourselves that we are alive today, right? And we are able to perform our duties. We are able to perform our tasks. We are able to fulfill our duties and responsibilities. That is the greatest appreciation we can give it to ourselves. But instead of what we are thinking, that is not good, this is not good, that is not good. So he is not good, she is not good. All sorts of negativity we are carrying out with ourselves. It is not only with us, but with the society, with the organizations, with the nation, with the world. These kind of negativity will not lead us to anywhere, but it makes us unproductive, counterproductive, and it will also lead to various issues, not only physiological, psychological, emotional, and also various other issues. It will also lead to economic issues because we underperform, we are preoccupied with our thoughts, and we neglect our own duties and responsibilities. Either we underperform or we do not perform at the optimum level, we do not reach the optimum levels. So all these will impact not only us, our family, but also our nation. So why these curtain raiser videos are to see how much positivity is happening. Everywhere negativity is there, positivity is there. It's two sides of the coin. No one can deny. No one is completely 100% good. No one is 100% bad. But what is more important is appreciating what is bad, what is good, and knowing what is bad, so that we can, when we understand what is bad, we can take measures so that it can be turned into good. Instead of that, if we always focus on bad things or the worst things that are happening, it is very difficult for us to move forward, and we will be in the shackles of that, our own thoughts, our own negativity, that will hinder our progress and also hinder our development. Not only our personal development, it will also hinder the professional development and also hinder our nation's development at large. Today, our attitudes towards employment. Now, there are a lot of employment opportunities, but every aspirant looks only to the government jobs. Why? Sarcastically or humorously, if many movies have portrayed what government job is. You need not work, you get plenty of holidays, and you get lot of benefits and lifelong retirement benefits. Is this really what an employee should look for? Unfortunately, these kind of things that are being portrayed by popularly and across the media will also demotivate and make the younger youth, which is the largest youth in the world, will have a diverse impact on that. And see, now we can see also, as per the statistics also, many youth are losing their valuable time and resources in spending and preparing for these things. I know if you see the statistics also in different arenas also, 3 to 6%, not more than 10% of the total employment is in public sector, but 90% of the youth are engaging and looking for employment in public sector only. That is a problem. 80% of the unemployment problem today, or 80% of the poverty problem exists today of this issue. The first is education, where education is not being taken up in a productive, constructive manner, where the value education is missing, where there is a huge gap between the industry and academia. Academic institutions teach one thing, industry needs some other thing. So there is a huge gap, and again we need to have something like skill development courses, or skill development university, or a program where skills has to be enhanced, which are in fact has to be developed in the schools and colleges only. But again, these skills, this kind of practical exposure which is lacking in the mainstream education, is again have to be invested in infrastructure and training. The lot of time is being wasted. Of course, money is not a major constraint. You can earn today or tomorrow, but time, every second will not come again. So this time is very important aspect. 1 year, 2 years in skill development courses, even after pursuing professional courses, how much time is wasted, how much productivity is lost, how much man, for that matter, women hours is lost. So all these are very crucial when we are talking about so many aspects. All these aspects contribute to the nation's development. Why we are talking about all these things is, unless and until we change, unless and until as an individual I change, as an individual we change, the change is not going to happen. As the famous quote says, let's be the change we wish to be, or we want to be. We need to change ourselves in the very first place. As long as we encourage corruption, corruption will continue. As long as we encourage malpractices, malpractices will continue. Now, who is going to change? We ourselves has to change. Then only these other ill sides or ill effects of present system will go away. Now, just by simply criticizing, or just by pointing out, or just by focusing on that, nothing is going to happen. That is what we were on the wrong side of a coin, where we were always looking at the negative side, ignoring the positive side. Today, rest of the world is teaching us about our own Vedic maths. You know, we are importing these Vedic maths principles from rest of the world, where our own culture, traditions, our Vedas, which has provided rich culture. Today, how many is reading Vedas for that matter? Just remove the religious significance of Vedas and just try to read it as a book, or try to read it as a novel, or try to read it as a comic book. How many of us we are reading? How much knowledge is there lying in those ancient and precious libraries, and they are not being used? This is the greatest disadvantage of our present generations. We have a lot of opportunities, we have a lot of knowledge, we have a lot of wisdom living in these museums, but how we are able to use them? Are we really interested in them? Are we properly mentored or guided or supervised for such destinations or for such paths? Are we really supervising our young children or young research scholars for such kind of research work? What is that we are promoting? We can be very critical about all these aspects if we want to be very critical or analytical. So today is the day we will not focus into the negative aspects. So let's see how well we can appreciate what is happening in this present nation and what has happened in the past 75 years and what best we can do in the coming generations. So let's have a very positive outlook, constructive outlook in whatever topic you are taking. But it should, every topic, every presentation is expected to reflect on the glory of the nation, as the theme has said today. So with this curtain raiser, I would like to set the direction and would like to initiate the proceedings of the conference today, so that we all have very good presentations from all the eminent speakers. So let's be constructive, productive, and positive. We will see this is the greatest challenge of ourselves now today, to all the speakers, including myself, who are talking about this, to avoid negativity, to avoid our prejudices, to avoid our biases, and to avoid any kind of negative perspectives. And let's see how positive or how constructive or how productive we can talk about the nation's development today in these sessions. So with this, we will, I think we have our so we'll be starting our session.